Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. And it's Thursday. It's February 21st. This will be our chart lesson for today. And this is going to wrap it up for the week. No chart lessons on Friday. So, um, kind of a quiet day, but there were several really good trades, especially early on in this downtrend here. Earlier, you see we were real steep, and then we kind of flattened out to a little flatter trading range here, or I'm sorry, trend channel here. Then we got a break, a couple legs down to a new low, and then we really just went sideways. There's a little bit of an upward bias to this, but the bigger pattern I think is sideways. You can see we spent most of the day in that lower tier of this channel here. Once we broke higher, you'd look for a measured move, and you can see we actually went a little further before that than that with a little failed breakout, and then we reversed and sold back down and actually made a new low for the day. It actually got a little bit volatile this afternoon selling off. There weren't a lot of opportunities to enter that though. Um, you had a chance up here. You can go back and forth about this one. Um, it's real close to being red. You could actually argue for this one too. Again, it would be, but this one I would definitely only make green, and I'll explain that when we get to it. Um, And there's another chance down here with a lower high, but it's right into the low of where the range was. So you need enough room to get out before you get to this low. And on my chart, it's exactly 4 ticks to that low. Didn't matter um, because it continued on, but you don't know that ahead of time, so you got to play that. And just one thing to remember about this, even though there's a little bit of an upward bias here, the bigger pattern is we're just going sideways. You can see when you're consistently swinging above and below the EMA like that, we didn't really get above it till right here, and it didn't stay there. It turned below and then went straight down. Now that's a trend down. You can see how everything's below the EMA. The EMA is pointing down, and you can see here the EMA is mostly flat until we get a little bit of up right here, and then right here at the last when it jumps up into this next quadrant, it's got a little bit of an uptrend then, and everything's consistently above the EMA for just a, well, let's see, from about 11 o'clock to maybe 12:30, so about an hour and a half, it's mostly uphill there. I don't see much I like because it's right into that resistance area, and you got to respect it until it acts as support, and you see it never does really act as support, and then it sells off and it turns down. And if you notice, this looks very similar to what we saw yesterday. We were mostly kind of sideways with a little bit of an upward bias. So this actually has a little more upward bias in it, but still notice how we're swinging above and below the EMA. Uh, that's more of a range type deal, and you can trade that both ways. And somebody had made a comment on the video yesterday that, how it was mostly shorts, but yet the trend was up. Well, yes, there is an upward bias here during this part right here, but the real play was the range, and when you're playing a range, you buy the lows and sell the highs, and so that's the reason. And there weren't a lot of good buy setups; it was mostly sell setups. So that was the reason on what looked like kind of an upward bias kind of day, you had more sales than you did buys. Today was very similar. Notice how there's a few sales in there, and it's mostly sales, and there's a few buys in this one too, though. You got a little better setups than what we had yesterday. So let's back out a little more where it's a little easier to see, and we'll talk about the trades and wrap it up for the week. 7 o'clock came right through here, and you really just had to kind of be patient because you want to be, this is all downhill, so you want to wait on the short. We do get what looks like an overshoot here. So in that case, we could get a break here. Generally, a break will come soon after a overshoot, and we actually made a couple swings down before we got outside. But come to find out, we just kind of flattened out here, and that's rather common because this is too steep. A good healthy trend is 45 degrees from one corner of the page to the next, and this is closer. This actually flattens out a little more than what you would like, but that's still a good healthy trend. And notice how prices turn down off this upper line and turn up off this lower line. That's a good, perfect, uh, easy to find channel with clearly defined trend and trend channel lines. And that's what you want to find. So makes it much easier. And you know you got your lines right when they're both, when prices are reacting off both. And notice how this line, as we move down, prices are bouncing off of it on this side. And so prices are actually still reacting to that line too. So you got to watch that, because sometimes it can cause, it might stay within that, but then bounce off this one, and it might look like a little wedge right down into that triangle. And technically it wouldn't, that's not a wedge. I don't believe in wedges. I believe that what causes wedges are when you get conflicting trend lines that cross into each other, and you might have this trend line still holding on the way down, but this one is taking over on this side, and so you just kind of look like you're wedging down there, and that's what causes that. And so for that reason, that's why I say I don't really believe in wedges, because I believe that the channels create the wedges. So anyway, first trade I saw, you had to be a little patient. It was right around 8 o'clock. Notice you got a new low right there, and you get a first entry on that break there, and you move up, and right off the trend line, the EMA, when it broke below that bar is fairly bearish. It's mostly stem. There's a couple of ticks down here, but that's bearish enough. That's a good second entry. And look at it go. And then it comes back again, and you get a little first entry, and it doesn't tick higher there, but it's still a higher low. So when it broke below there, let's make this a little bigger. So when it broke below that bar right there, again, it looks a little bit like this one right here as far as signal bar. But you can see that trend line still holding. That's a second entry short. Another nice little move down. Then we bounce again. There's actually a first entry and then a second entry, but that's a big bullish bar, and this one's got a lot of stem, kind of an inside bar, so I don't like it. But when you get this lower high, and it's right off that trend line, right, that secondary trend line, look how bearish. I probably would have tell you to hold on this one or made it green in most cases, but because this channel looks so clean and clear, I like that one. And look how it takes off. And look how everything is consistently below the EMA. That's a downtrend all the way. You almost get a little bit of a repeat pattern here of what you've been seeing. You get a first entry, but it never makes a high or low here. And so if it would have broke higher, maybe right there, maybe you go short right there. And I guess if you wanted, this is too close to a doji, so it looks like 4 bars stacked up with a doji. That's congestion, so I'm just not crazy about that one. I didn't mark it. I think you're better off to wait and see if it doesn't break lower and come back and create a little trap. It doesn't though. It just keeps going down. And we're just kind of working sideways. I don't see anything I like in here. There is a second entry short right here, but we're not back to the EMA. We're not back to the trend line. We're kind of going sideways, and you don't have much room to the lows. So if you skip that one, then it's real obvious this is kind of a trading range. And early on, you probably would have had there's actually a midline there as well. If you just find the middle of these two lines, you would have found a midline in there. You don't really need it. But you're just congestion here, and you get a little breakout and a big bearish bar, but I'd wait and see if you get a second entry and it pulls back here and gives you a second entry when it breaks below there, and you got enough room to get out on this one. So that's a good short. And then we bounce, and you might have considered going long here, but let me just put this on there so you can see it. But you can see that midline right in there. It's actually right there, I think. And you don't want to go long right into that because it's back underneath again. On the breakout, you can treat this one like a failed breakout. So that's a good place to go short right there. And that's 2 legs down, and then it kind of rallies here, comes back up, and this time it goes a little higher. And for a while I had that line right across here as well. But you would have measured this and looked for that measured move. And that's exactly where we went to. And then we turn down right there, and you make a lower high, and you get a second entry short. That is really close to being a doji, but this is a range and it's a lower high and it is more bearish than it is neutral. So I like going short there and you get that next leg down. It's really tempting to buy right here. This is a great example of why I like to wait on a higher low, because it opens and trades higher and then turns and goes down, would have taken out any stops right there, and then turned and went exactly where you thought it was going to go. And that's never any fun. So when it moves up and it comes back, it actually turns down off that EMA right there, but you don't want to go short right into that support. So, but it ticks one tick lower and then reverses and goes back up here. And where would you expect prices to be going? Back up to the highs. That's where you want to enter. And that's what I'm always telling people. Just because you see a second entry or whatever doesn't mean you enter. You got to know what prices are doing. They're in a range here. And what do prices do in a range? They go from the lows to the highs to the lows to the highs. Look how prices are just going back and forth here from lows to highs. And if you know that, then you know which way you should be looking for an entry. And you should know you need to be looking for an entry to the upside. So when it breaks lower and then turns and trades right out the other side, that's going to be a trap. I like going long there. It is close to this midline, but this is not a very big channel. And you figure prices are going to go to the other side. And it does. It actually breaks out. There's a lower high right here, which is very similar to this trade. So it's very tempting. And if you did take this one, you probably would have got stopped out. By the time this bar closed, almost a doji, and then this one closed, you can start to see the congestion. You should stay out. But if you got in right there, if you saw that trade and took that lower high, there's nothing you can do about it, because it looks like a pretty good trade. It's just one of those where it turns out to be, I wouldn't even say it's a short trap, because it never plays out to the upside. It ends up just going down. But sometimes we're early, and there's nothing you can do about being early. If you're reading it right and you're a little early and you get stopped out, there's just nothing you can do about it. That's just the way trading goes sometimes. And that's one of these trades where, but that's such a big bar, hopefully most people would have skipped it. And it might have broken to the lower side first and then gone up before it came back down and closed. But that still would have looked like a very bearish lower high right there. And then when it came back up, I'd be saying, okay, maybe we'll get a double test here, but then it just ends up going sideways. So just stay out of that. And notice how we hit the bottom, and you get another chance to go short, but it's right into these lows, and we just came off the low. So where would you think we're going? To the highs. So this is a higher low, but this bar is too neutral here to be trying to go long, or actually it may be more bearish than neutral. Looks like it closes on the lower, maybe one tick off the middle, but then it tries to go lower again and fails and turns up. That's a failed second entry long that's going to trap some shorts that don't understand how to play a range. So go long right there and look, where do you think it's going to go? Back to the high side. And I did mark this one here. Notice this is a little double bottom, so it's a first entry, then it goes higher, second entry. So it's a second entry right off this high. It's at least a double test. We've really tested this more than a couple of times. So I kind of like that when it's coming off the highs. We're looking for prices to go back to the lows. Enter there and you ride it. It goes right back down to the bottom. So now it's bouncing off the lows. Where do you expect it to go from there? Back to the high. There it goes. You don't really get a setup on this one. Now it's at the highs. Where do you expect it to try to go? The lows. And notice how it bounces a little bit early this time. And look how the closes are starting to move higher up. It's starting to gain a little momentum. So draw that trend line up through there, just in case. And there is a second entry long counting from here. Pull back first entry, pull back second entry. And if you see this trend line, this might be a little tempting, but notice how much stem on both sides. I wouldn't take that trade. It's still below the EMA, even though that's not that big a deal, because we're looking for prices to go from high to low. But we just came off the high and we didn't get back to the low. So it could break higher and turn down and stop you out. So I don't like that one. Turns out to be a really good move. But we can't predict that ahead of time. We got to follow the rules. But now look what happens. It comes back. and makes a failed second entry short and gives you a nice bullish reversal type bar. I like going long right there. And you can see we're making higher highs and higher lows now, so you should have this little trend channel in play. And you would expect it to go back to the highs, and then what does it do from there? It comes back, and there's a second entry long here. Again, not a very good signal bar. It looks a little like this setup right here, but notice how this one only went up and actually, wait a minute. I lost my spot here. Oh yeah, the second entry is right here. So it looks a lot like this one. And we didn't mark it for the same reason we didn't mark this one. We wouldn't mark that one. Although this one did take off, and usually a lot of times repeat patterns will look the same. And you can see that you made that high, come back, you make a lower high, you come down. So this is really a new high. Pull back first entry, pull back second entry, and here it is again. Pull back first entry, pull back second entry. So it looks a whole lot, and this bar, this signal bar even looks like that one. So if you'd have taken it, it would have worked. But in this case, you don't have much room back to that resistance area right in there. And at this point, this is still the range, and this just looks like an overshoot up here. So if anything, you might be looking for shorts instead of a long right here. But at the same time, you got this trend line working up. So this is kind of an iffy one. So I didn't mark it. I don't think you should take it. You might argue for it to be green. But for all the reasons I just told you, I'd stay away from it. And the same thing here. You might even look at this as a short because you got a new high, first entry, second entry. And even though you got a scalper's profit here, this could be, looks like a lower high and a failed breakout. So a failed, like you treat that like a failure. So you could even go short right there. Again, I'm going to mark it green, but you could take that short because it looks like a failed breakout of a range. Again, I'm going to leave it green, but that would have been a quick, easy trade. Another thing to consider about going short there is this is the first break of this trend line, so we may shoot for a new high. And we end up doing that, this trade would have still worked out, and then we take off, and it pulls back right here. If it would have broken lower and then turned up, I would have liked going long right there. Okay, I had a little interruption there. We were talking about this trade. If it would have broke lower and then turned up, I would have liked going high along right there. I still don't know if I would have made it blue, but I would have liked the trade better because we're looking, once prices went higher there, you're looking for a measured move, and that puts prices way up here. Although you got a little bit of highs already across here, and so you're kind of going long into some support. So that's still a reason I'm not crazy about that one being blue. But I knew people would ask about this one, and I just decided to mark it green. We do pull back again here, and we try to go higher. I don't see anything I like in here because now you're back up here into these highs, a measured move, and you've had a break down here and a new high in place. So this thing could reverse at any moment. And notice how we push higher a few times, and then suddenly the sell-off starts and off it goes. And that's what you'd expect once you've made a measured move up. There's your first half of the channel, and once we went higher, there's your measured move. So we overshot that, and then on the little channel working up, it was kind of a weak channel up till right here. This is when it kind of got a little bullish, but we got the break. And then we got one leg pull back and a second leg up, and then it sells off. And after those two legs up and these last couple of little jogs, look at that big bearish bar, and then you get a lower bearish bar, and you're not quite back to the EMA. You would expect it to turn back down here. So you may go short there. It does break higher. When it goes lower right there, you may go short right there. And you're just looking to hopefully ride it back to here. But this thing just keeps going, and you would have caught a runner on this too. So, and then we talked about this earlier. I marked it. There's a failed second entry long. Notice that high, first entry, and then you move down at second entry. And notice how it bounces here right off the trend line, doesn't go very far, and then turns down. That's probably going to trap some longs because a lot of people don't realize that the break and the new high it could sell off here, but it's still aggressive, and that's why I marked it. That's why I marked it green. But you got to figure on that break higher right there that with this thing trending higher, that some people are going to try to buy right there. And notice how we bounced off the EMA there. We bounced off of pretty much there. We tried to bounce here though, and it just shoots right through. You don't get much support on it there, so that's telling you something's changed. And then it comes back, and then it can't get back through the EMA and gives you that bearish bar, so you may go short. Right? It actually broke higher and then turns and goes down, so you may go short right there. Again, it's aggressive, so I'm gonna leave it green. And then we run down, and you get a second entry short here. And this is actually your signal bar, and so you're using this for an inside bar. And inside bars are not as reliable. So even though that makes a higher low, and that's a second entry short when it breaks lower, that's not a great setup. But that is 2 legs back to the key entry point, and we couldn't quite even get back to the EMA. And that's a pretty strong trend down. So with a break, we're going to probably try to make a new low. So that's one to consider. But again, I made it green. So there just wasn't much happening in the afternoon. It got a little more aggressive. Most of those trades are all aggressive, but there were quite a few on. I mean, this was the easy trend channel to find, this move down right here. And then this should have been fairly straightforward going sideways here. You may not have enough experience to find it early on, but by this point right here, you should have had this channel right here. And then when we broke higher and started trading up in here, you look for that measured move, and you just measure the first channel, move it up, and look for a measured move. And you can see we actually broke out of that. We actually, on this move up, we went slightly through it. And we pull back, and you can see we're just kind of going around it. It pushes up, and then but that also plays out this channel working up as you get your break here, 2 legs up, and then you reverse. So interesting day. We hadn't had, lately when we've had no more movement than this, there weren't many trades, but there were some options today. So anyway, I hope you had a good trading day. Hope you had a good week. We'll be back again to do it Monday, but I'm done for today, done for this week. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.